نحمده ونصلي على رسول النبي الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. قال الله تعالى في شان حبيبه إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه على سيدنا مولانا محمد بارك وسلم عليه صلاة وسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. I guess before we start, any questions over what we've gone over so far? No. No. Okay. Yeah, so last week we kind of, before that we had shifted gears, and so we kind of brought things back towards Imam Hasan AS. And as I said, we were talking about where Rasulullah had foretold these events that would be happening, and also the events that would be happening specifically with Ahlul Bayt, or the household, including Imam Hasan AS handing over the rule by which he created peace between the Muslims, or a truce between the Muslims rather. And he also told about the difficulties that the household would be going through. And all of this is, not for their benefit, but all of this is for the benefit of the Ummah, so that we are able to, if we choose to, see Islam in its true form. So, as we mentioned, Imam Hasan AS, when he returns to Madinah Munawwara, things are not easy for him. Even going to the masjid is very difficult, because the governor, of course, initially is Marwan, who part of the khutbah is to curse Ali radiallahu anhu. And then he eventually gets banned from coming, because it reminds the people of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the powers to be didn't want that, because as we see today, and this is not something new, this is something that's been going on throughout time, rulers want to do whatever they want to do. They don't want anybody telling them you can't do this, or you have to do this. They don't want to give anybody their rights, and the only time they give people their rights is when it's beneficial to themselves. And again, you see this throughout history. So, same issues going on then, and this is again what separated the Khilafah from every other form of rule, is that in the Khilafah, the ruler, who is truly a servant to the people, is giving the people their rights. First of all, he's fulfilling the rights of Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he's also making sure that the huquq al-ibad, or the rights of the servants of Allah, are also fulfilled. So, so as we mentioned before, and I keep saying this, these are people who were blacklisted. This household was literally blacklisted, in the sense that, they themselves were put through hardship, and anyone who associated with them would also be scrutinized. Again, same thing today. The government doesn't like somebody, and they make it very difficult for them, and they also make it difficult for anyone who is associated with them. So when we're thinking about then, we have to realize that, people don't change. Islam came to change people, but only those who are worthy are changed. those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts, and those who are willing to humble themselves before the beloved of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the ones that He accepts. So these are the people that change. If you look at the psychology of mankind, again, it hasn't changed. You still have people that, you have groups of people that fall into various categories of various mindsets, and you got to deal with all of them. Yeah. So, one thing to understand, during the Khilafah of Umar, radiallahu anhu, a lot of wealth came in, as well as during the Khilafah of Uthman, radiallahu anhu, a lot of wealth came in because of all of these lands being conquered. And the household, Imam Hasan and Imam Hasan AS, were given distributions from this, from the wealth that's coming in, at the same level that the companions of Badr were given. So they are kind of like the top tier. So they were given a lot of wealth, but then when you look at them, when they had money in the house, it didn't last. And the reason it didn't last is not like us. You see like today, you get these, especially these athletes and these, whether they're basketball players, football players, or whatever, or, they're fighters who amass hundreds of millions of dollars throughout their lifetime. But in the end, they're broke because they wasted it all. All of it, squandered. Here, it's not squandering. These are people who truly are doing business with Allah. And so that somebody comes in, knocks on their door and says, we need something, they give them everything. These are truly the descendants. They are the rightful heirs of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his character, and what they did. And so, multiple occasions where some poor person knocked on the door, or somebody in debt knocked on the door and said, I need something, and they gave them literally everything, and then went to sleep hungry. So this is the entire life of Imam Hasan AS. He made the Hajj at least 22 times, some narrations 25 times, on foot. And this is, again, a person who had access to all of these luxuries, chose not to use them. He's making Hajj on foot, and when he was asked why he did this, when there are, horses and camels that he could be riding, he says that, when I'm going to the house of Allah, I wish to go as a humble servant. So this is his whole, so the next 10 years, basically, from the time he leaves the Khilafah to the time that he is martyred, is spent like this. And so, and the powers to be make everything very difficult on him. Every angle that they can, and the powers that were mainly Marwan, who, as I said, when he first came back for basically a stretch of about 6 years, Marwan is the governor. And then he's removed, and then eventually will come back and then removed again, and then, because he falls out of favor and back in favor with the government, and this is how things happen. Imam Hasan AS, had several wives, of course no more than 4 at a time, Islamically, but he had divorced a few, 3 of them, because of various reasons. There was one, Jawda bin Ash'ath, so this is his wife. And what happens is, you can imagine, or rather we can't really imagine, living in under these conditions. Most men would get up and run, and so any person whose character is weak kind of gives in, because again, you're going to bed hungry when you could have had plenty of food, but simply because a poor person or someone in debt or a captive or anybody else comes and knocks on the door, everything's gone. So in the end, and most scholars say around sometime in 7th of Safar, year 50 Hijri, is when he will finally be poisoned with the poison that will actually kill him. But before that, they had tried to poison him 6 other times, and he would get sick and then he would recover. So this was a persistent thing. And if you remember, the terms of the agreement were that no one, or the last term of the agreement was that no one was to be named heir, to rule after Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. And so, and even though the wording was that the rule will come back to the Shura, the understanding was that the rule would actually come back to Imam Hasan AS.
Go ahead.
So when so he basically, Imam Hasan Islam, was standing in the way of anyone else becoming the ruler after Muawiyah. So you can think of people having aspirations to become rulers, and they have one person standing in their way, and so it becomes convenient for them if he's not in the way anymore. He, in the end, when he is finally poisoned, and at this point he's literally vomiting up clots of blood, and the Imam Hussein al-Islam comes to him, and they have a conversation, and he's talking to him, and he asks him, he says, who did this to you? So Imam Hasan al-Salam, this is one of the sunnahs of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is as-sattar. He covers the faults of the people. And again, this is that household who fulfill the rights of the verse Sibghatullah, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ مِنَ اللَّهِ سِبْغَةً. Adopt the colors of Allah, and whose color is better than the color of Allah? And of course, we've talked about this before. This is talking about the characteristics of Allah. Allah is Rahim, so we should also be merciful. Allah is, Al-Wadud, so we should also be loving. Allah is, Al-Haq, so we should also be truthful. And so many things there. And so Imam Hasan al-Islam, when Imam Hussein al-Islam asked him this question, Imam Hasan al-Islam, he says, look, he says, if it's who I think it is, then Allah will deal with them. And if it's not who I think it is, then why should I blame someone who's innocent? He said, let it go. And then he asked him, he said, where should we bury you? He says that my desire is that I should be buried next to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so ask Aisha radiallahu anha, because that's the house in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is buried. And remember, she's still living there in that house. So ask her, and I know that she will give the permission, but Marwan will create issues. And if there is, kind of a major issue with this, then bury me in Baqi next to our mother, Bi Fatima Salamullah alayha. So when he finally passed, and we'll come back to who poisoned him, here Imam Hasan AS kind of covers that up, says let it go. Because there are two forms of martyrdom. You have the open martyrdom that we always think about, someone going and fighting in the way of Allah and being killed. But you also have the secret forms of martyrdom, where somebody is, various forms where this is one of those, and the poisoning. And so these are the two representatives of Rasulullah, Hasan and Imam Hasan AS, and they represent both forms of martyrdom. So when he finally passes, Imam Hasan AS is the one who bathes him and shrouds him, and they are taking him, to eventually be buried. And again, everything is set for him to be buried alongside his grandfather in the house of Bibi Aisha Siddiqa, alongside Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But as he said, as Imam Hasan AS had already foretold, Marwan creates an issue. And because, you think of it from their standpoint, if Imam Hasan AS is buried next in the Rawda of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and yet all the rest of Banu Umayyah that are buried in Medina are buried in Jannatul Baqi, it gives him a special position, which he already has. He already has a special position. But then the people start to realize his special position. So, the governor of Medina at that time is Sa'id ibn al-As. And he doesn't have any problem with Imam Hasan AS being buried in the Rawda of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, Marwan, who even when he's not the governor is still in the background of many things, while they are carrying the body, creates an issue, and to the extent that even arrows are shot at Imam Hasan AS. And Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu, who's also there, and he tries to calm things down, and he says, we need to fulfill the wishes of Imam Hasan AS, and Imam Hussein AS eventually says, yes, we need to, because they realize that if they push the issue, there's literally going to be bloodshed in the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And whether he's buried there or he's buried anywhere else in the world doesn't change the position of Imam Hasan AS in the least bit. He is the beloved grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is the one, who Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam named, but also said that his name came from Jannah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the name Hassan, and no one else had this name before him. Same thing with Hussein. No one else had that name before him. They are the first to have those names, and they are derivatives of beauty, because they are so beautiful, both physically and in character, and every other way you can be beautiful. He is the one who the first sustenance he received in this world is the blessed saliva of Rasulullah, directly from the tongue of Rasulullah. He is the one who resembled Rasulullah the most. He is not just physically resembled him, but also resembled him in character. He is, we can, as far as his virtues, we can go on and on and on. He is the one who brought peace to the Muslims, who saved Muslims from bloodshed, by giving up his own rights. It's easy giving up somebody else's rights. It's like it's easy for the government to spend tax money because it's not their money. It's easy spending somebody else's money, but it's hard spending your own money. It's easy to forgo someone else's rights, but it's very difficult to forgo your own rights. When you're on the truth, when you are the truth. And yet, just to save the blood of the Muslims, he gives all of this up. So they, and they don't even allow Imam Hasan AS to lead his funeral prayer. Literally it was the right of Imam Hasan AS to lead the funeral prayer. But they don't even allow that. And so the governor, Sayyid ibn al-As, he's the one who leads the funeral prayer for Imam Hasan AS. But again, it doesn't change who he is. It's like the old translation of an old Arabic poem which says that, even if the dogs kill the lion and dance on his grave, the lion is still a lion and the dogs are still dogs. Doesn't matter. And so same thing here. Doesn't matter. He is who he is, and nothing can change that. He is the leader of the youth of Jannah. So those who oppose him, where will they go? If you want to be in Jannah, you need to accept your leader. You need to follow your leader, because that's where he's going to take you. And again, these aren't titles that were given to him by the people. These are titles that were given to him by Allah, confirmed or affirmed to us and told to us by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When we read Surah Kawthar, and the background to Surah Kawthar, and we've talked about this, it's the shortest surah in the Quran. Literally one line, 3 verses that all fit on one line. And the background to it is the initial revelation of Surah Kawthar, because it was revealed twice. But the initial revelation is Makki, and then it was revealed again in Medina, Munawwara. Situations are the same. In Makkah, Imam, the son of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Qasim, and then the second son, Tahir or Abdullah, they pass. So Quraysh starts saying, he is Abtar. This will die, this religion will die with him. Abtar means the one who has no lineage. So this is what they said, that he is Abtar, astaghfirullah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals Surah Kawthar, which is surah number Surah 108, shortest surah in the Quran. And in those 3 verses, and very short verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, delivers an ocean, of not just knowledge, but a response to those who are attacking His beloved, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر. And the way he translates it here, to thee have we granted the abundance. Kawthar, from kathra, which means abundance. Abundance of what? He doesn't limit, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't limit the abundance. Abundance of everything that is good. But also abundance of progeny. Which is, what it's referring to, or one of the main things that it's referring to here, because the challenge was that, you have no lineage, no sons, and so your whole lineage, as far and this religion and everything that you represent stops with you. This is what Quraysh is saying. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, without any doubt, we have given you abundance. Kawthar, yes, Kawthar is also that hawd, or that pool on the Day of Judgment that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, will give his lovers water to drink from. But again, in the context of why the verse is revealed, Kawthar is also abundance of progeny. And in reality, abundance of everything that is good. Inna shaniyaka fasalli li rabbika wanhar. Therefore, to thy Lord turn in prayer and sacrifice. And then in the end, Inna shaniyaka huwal abtar. For he who hates thee, he will be cut off. He is the one up there. So those that are accusing you of being up there, they're the ones who are up there. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said every lineage will be cut except for his lineage. And so when we look at this, who is the first representative? And of course, Kawthar here also means Bi Fatima salamullah alayhi, because it's through her that his lineage will flourish. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes. No. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Everything's good? Yeah, so we're talking about Imam Hasan AS. And so right now I was referring to Surah Kawthar, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Quraysh, and Kawthar, as I said, was revealed twice. It's Makki as well as Madani. Because in Makkah, the Quraysh are the ones who made this accusation after his sons passed away, that, he's up there. His lineage is cut, his religion will die with him. In Makkah, in Medina Munawwara, it was after Ibrahim, his son Ibrahim radiallahu anhu passed away, that the hypocrites and the Jews there started making the same accusation. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed it again, to make sure that there's no doubt. This is it. And one question comes up here is, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not allow his sons to grow up into adulthood? And we know this, the answer to this, from what he said about Ibrahim. He said that if there were any prophet after me, it would have been Ibrahim, his son Ibrahim. So when you look at like Bani Israel, there are many prophets amongst Bani Israel whose sons were also prophets. Right? So if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if his sons were not prophets, then somebody could try to make that comparison that, and people would try that. You see, his, the so-and-so prophet's son was a prophet, but, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's son's not a prophet. So they want to try to make that accusation there. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saves him from this. Because in reality, if they had grown to adulthood, then technically you could say they deserve to be prophet. But this is a sign that Rasulullah is Khatam al-Nabiyyin, that there are no more prophets after him, period. Yes. Yeah, so that way Khatam al-Nabiyyin becomes concrete. There's no leeway for that door to be opened, and also, again, no one can try to lower the position of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in comparison to the other prophets. So two things happen there. But the first, of course, being Fatima salamullah alayha is Kawthar. because this is where his abundance, the abundance of his progeny come from. But the first representative of that progeny is Imam Hasan AS. So again, Imam Hasan AS is the first representative, and of course Imam Hussein AS will be the next representative of that progeny. And so, so we see this, throughout, or when we look, as I was saying, when we look at the life of Imam Hasan AS, he is a pure representative of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his character, in his mannerisms, in the way he did things, and his love for the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that he would not, so he gave up again the rule of a third of the known world, just so that the blood of the Muslims would not be shed. Even understanding that this would make things very difficult on him. And so again, as we were talking, even at his burial, they didn't leave him alone. He wanted to be, and Bibi Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha, she was happy to give him this permission to be buried alongside his grandfather, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But of course, Marwan creates the issues, arrows are shot, and then eventually he's buried in Jannatul Baqi, alongside his mother, Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha. So this is the, kind of, this shows, well, an interesting thing here also is Marwan, the one who created all this issue. Okay, in the masjid, he creates this issue, we can't bury him here. But he follows the procession of the janazah to Jannatul Baqi. And there, as they're burying him, he's crying. I mean, he's crying, not just tears. I mean, he's like a baby crying. So Imam Hussein al-Islam, after the burial, goes to him and says, what is this? Your whole life, his whole life you made so hard and difficult for him. Why are you crying now? So he says that this man's hilm, his resilience, his forbearance was greater than the mountains. And so he couldn't help, even though he's the one who tortured him, he couldn't help but cry for him, because this is also a sign of Allah, or the sign of the love of Allah. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves someone, he tells Jibreel al-Islam that so-and-so, I love so-and-so, so you also love so-and-so. So Jibreel al-Islam then goes and makes this announcement to all of creation. And all of creation starts to love him. And then, so this love, even the enemies of that person, they, in their, within them there is an atom of this. Doesn't save them in the end, because it's sort of like, with when Uthman radiallahu was martyred, and the people came to Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh, and they said, oh, these people that have done this, they're so sorry for what they did. And Ali radiallahu response to them was that their sorrow is like that of shaitan, that when he deceives or does waswasa or whispers to someone and they act upon his whispering, then he runs away and he says, Inni akhafullah lillahi, Inni akhafullah rabbul alameen. That I fear Allah. Yeah. That I fear Allah, the Lord of the worlds. He says that their sorrow is like that, like the sorrow of shaitan. It has no meaning. If you truly were sorry, then why'd you would be different. It would have changed you. And here, even in the end, we look at Marwan, or rather the end of the life of Imam Hasan AS, or this worldly life of Imam Hasan AS. Because the martyrs are not dead. And Imam Hasan AS is a martyr, even though it's a secret martyrdom, because he was poisoned. So, even in the end of this worldly life of his, as we see it, even though his connection, and again, I have to keep saying these things because these are the things that that various other deviant groups have poisoned us with, the way we think, So, Imam Hasan AS, his connection to this dunya has not ended. His connection to the ones who love him is not ended. And so, and I'll come back to a point on this in a second. But with, so even then, Marwan didn't stop his atrocities against him. With all of the issues that he created at the burial. So, but again, like I said, it doesn't change the position of Imam Hasan AS in the least bit. He is still Imam Hasan, and and his enemies, are the worst of creatures. Period. As far as like we know that the martyrs are not dead, and this we've talked about this before. Two things here. One is we aren't simply ordered not to say that they're dead. ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء عند ربهم بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون. Do not say that those who are dead are. Do not say that those who have been slain in the way of Allah are dead, but indeed they are alive. بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون, and you don't perceive it. And then in the other verse, ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. That do not even think that those who have been slain in the way of Allah are dead. They are alive and they receive their sustenance. So this is to emphasize. So they are alive, but we can't perceive it. And in reality, they are more alive than we are alive. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala affirms their life. Now there is a difference between a regular martyr being alive and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam being alive. Hayatun Nabi is different from a regular martyr, because a regular martyr, he is alive in reality, but he is dead legally, in that after he has been martyred, his wife, after completing the period of mourning, can get remarried, and his wealth is distributed amongst his heirs. Whereas with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his wives cannot marry, and his property or his wealth was not distributed amongst the heirs. It was given as waqf for the ummah. So he is literally alive, and he is legally alive as well. So both aspects. So this is an important difference to understand here. Okay. So now, after his martyrdom, of course, the torch is passed on to Imam Hasan AS. So he is now the leader of Banu Hashim. He is the only remaining living grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you would think that you would think that they would have made things easy for Imam Hasan AS, and they didn't. But you'd think also, okay, well, now they're going to make things easy for Imam Hasan AS. But before we start talking about Imam Hasan AS, again, as I said, this is roughly about 50-year Hijri. So this is 11 years, 10 and a half years or so before Karbala. as I said, when Imam Hasan AS is literally vomiting up blood, Imam Hussein AS is asking him who did this. And he said, look, if it's who I think it is, and it really, him saying think, is if it's who I know it is, Allah will deal with them. And if it's not, then why should I, name an innocent person? But the person that had poisoned him was his wife, Joda. His wife, the wife of Imam Hasan AS. Yeah. So, or one of his wives. And she had been promised 100,000 dinar plus to become, the wife of Yazid. Yazid had told her that I will take you as my wife and you will be the queen. So as I said, the household of Imam Hasan AS was not an easy household to live in from a worldly aspect. Because again, you would end up going to bed hungry. And not because there was lack of wealth, but simply because someone else come and knocked and asked, and he would give them everything. Yes. It's all distributed, all gone. And so, this is where, we see, certain women excel, where even under those conditions, they don't leave the side of their husband. And then we see those women who are attached to the dunya, and under these and when the dunya is presented in front of them, they run for it. Yes. So this is what happened. And so now she, she did this, but like the old saying, what goes around comes around. So she does this. She, after things are clear, she leaves. She goes to Sham, and of course she comes to Yazid, who through various messengers had given this offer to her. And when she goes to become the queen, he denies her. So who are you? Yeah. Yes, exactly. One hypocrite for another hypocrite. And he denies her, and she, and then, of course, we don't really know much of what happens after this. That's the end of her story. So, before I start talking about Imam Hussein AS, I know I'm skipping over a lot of things, but any questions so far? No? Good. Inshallah. And I'm sure I'll remember something later on and I'll bring it up down the road, inshallah. But so, when we look at Imam Hussein AS, and we look at his history, even before this point, he also is, like his brother, he is the leader of the youth of Jannah. Like his brother, his name, Hussein, was never used on the earth before. And his name was sent by Allah, to Rasulullah to name him Hussein. So so when we look at them as they're growing up, and even later on, because people try to distinguish them from each other. And how can we distinguish the ones whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself did not distinguish from each other? They literally are two parts of the whole. And the famous incident, which I've mentioned before, I'm going to mention again. When they were young, they were writing. And so they came to, of course, brotherly rivalry. So they came to their mother asking, okay, whose writing is better? And so she looks at it and she knows that if she says one is better than the other, then the other one's feelings will be hurt. And she's not willing to hurt either one's feelings. So she says, go ask your father. So they go to their father, Sayyidina Ali Karamallahu wajh. And they ask him the same question. And he thinks the same thing. And he says, go ask your mother. And they say, well, she's the one who sent us to you. So he says, well, go ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they come to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they ask him, whose writing is better? And he, the same thing. You know, if he says one is better than the other, then again, the other's feelings are hurt. So he says, well, go ask your parents. And they said, Ya Rasulullah, they're the ones who sent us to you. So he says, well, let's ask Allah. We'll let Allah decide. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends Jibreel alayhi salam. And you know, in one narration it was some fruits from paradise, in another narration it was 7 fruits from paradise, in another narration 7 pearls from paradise. And Jibreel alayhi salam comes and he says that we will throw these up. You know, we place the writings and we'll throw these up, and whichever side more of them land on, that writing is better. So he throws them up, and 7 objects go up, whether pearls or fruits, they go up. And 3 land on one side, and 3 land on the other side, and one of them splits in 2, and half here and half there. So again, these are 2 parts of a whole. Because, and the reason one of the reasons I'm re-emphasizing this point is because there are those who say, you know, that when Imam Hasan AS made the decision to hand over the rule, Imam Hussein AS was very upset with him. Astaghfirullah. You know, because these are the same people who think of this household like any other household, and it's not. You know, when Imam Hasan AS, being the Amir, not just of those who had given allegiance to him, but the leader of the household of Rasulullah, when he made the decision, that household backed him 100%. And he didn't, you know, Imam Hasan AS didn't make these decisions lightly, and then he understood this. And Imam Hasan AS also, whenever he made decisions, he again is on the sunnah of Rasulullah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked Rasulullah that when you decide something, consult with those with you. Rasulullah didn't need to consult with anybody. But this is a sunnah that's being established. Rasulullah is receiving revelation from Allah, and everything he says is nothing except revelation. Why does he need to consult anybody? Yeah. Surah Najm, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. So why does he need to consult anybody? What's that now?
You're right, that's a question provoking sound, because the wahi we don't question it, but Allah says, وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ.
Yeah, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, consult them. Yeah. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us a system. The sunnah. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's so many things that happen in the world, you know, through, everything that happens through means. Through wasila. Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need these things to happen through any means. But again, he's teaching us the system. And so the same thing here. Rasulullah is teaching us a system which the Khulfa Rashideen continued. And Imam Hasan AS is amongst the Khulfa Rashideen. And when he's making this decision, he is still Khulfa Rashideen. because he hasn't handed over the rule yet, right? So do we think he just made it out of thin air? He didn't just make it up. He consulted with his people, with those that were close to him, which include, and who was closer to him than his brother Imam Hasan AS. So this decision wasn't made in isolation. So for somebody to come back and later on say that, oh, he was upset with him and all this other nonsense, these are people talking like this because Allah is already upset with them. I mean, what else can you say for them? So, again, when we look at this, we look at the hilm, the resilience, the forbearance of Imam Hasan AS. And when he passes, now that torch is handed over to Imam Hasan AS. And, the 10 years that he's there, so 10 years after, of course, the 20 years that he's there before Karbala, after, the rule is handed over, but the 10 years after the passing of his brother, until Karbala happens, I mean, things were not easy for Imam Hasan AS either. They literally made things as hard as possible for him. He is also blacklisted, and anybody who associates with him is blacklisted. This is, again, the way governments work. And he patiently, with sabr and hilm, goes through all of this for 10 years until the situation changes, and this is when he takes his stand. Okay? So this is a very important point to understand here when we talk about Imam Hasan AS. And again, when we look at the birth of Imam Hasan AS, when we look at the birth of Imam Hasan AS, I mean, other than changing the names identical, it's interesting. Ali Rada wanted to name Imam Hasan AS Harb, warrior. Rasulullah said, no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent his name Hassan. He said, name him Hassan. When Imam Hasan AS is born, Ali Rada wanted to name him Harb. And then Rasulullah said, no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent his name Hussein. He is beautiful. They are both beautiful. The first sustenance that each one receives, the saliva of Rasulullah directly from the tongue of Rasulullah. The first one to truly hold them, other than the midwife who delivered them, both, is Rasulullah. I mean, all of these things, just, and this also, remember, Bibi Fatima Salamullah alayha is different from all other women on multiple levels, but also she is pure at a level that we cannot comprehend. She did not have the monthly issues that all other women have. She never missed a salat. And this is ayat al-tathir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already purified them with this perfect purification. She never missed a salat, not even when she gave birth. Because she gave birth to Imam Hasan AS after the Dhuhr Salat, after she makes Dhuhr Salat. And then when time for Asr came, she stood up for Asr Salat. And when one of the other women asked her, she said, that doesn't apply to me. She doesn't have all these other issues. It's interesting, when I was explaining this to someone, somebody said, well, there are other women like that, who don't have those monthly issues. I said, yeah, but they can't have kids. There might be other women who are like that, but they can't have kids. Again, she is not like anyone else. Just like her father is not like anyone else. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has distinguished Ahlul Bayt because of their connection to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So again, when we look at Imam Hasan AS, again, he is one of the leaders of the youth of Jannah along with his brother. He is this he is the representative of not just Banu Hashim, but he is truly the representative of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in every aspect. And so, so the next 10 years, again, the same situation. And when we look at his character as well, somebody asked him, boom, he would, give everything. And this was the sunnah of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh. Whatever came, by the time Maghrib came, whatever was left was given to those who were poor. And this is why Surah Insan, that whole surah, and according to Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, rahmatullahi alayhi, 313 verses of the Quran revealed in honor of Ali radiallahu and Ahlul Bayt. So more than anyone else, more than, because you have various verses that are revealed in honor of various companions, but no one comes even close to the number that are revealed here. And also Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal said that there are more Sahih ahadith that extol the virtues of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh and Ahlul Bayt than anyone else. So again, and I'm re-emphasizing this point is this is something we cannot forget, who they are and what they represent, and they fulfill the rights of that position. Because there are many people who are given various positions. We see this throughout the world. And they have no qualifications for that position, and they never do the first thing to fulfill the rights of that position. These are people who are qualified, but not just qualified, but also fulfill the rights of every position that they're given. So it wasn't like, they're just, like even the status of being the leader of the youth of Jannah. It's not just a title that was thrown out to them. The reality is even beyond that. And this again, this is their connection to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This actually gets to the hadith where the multiple ahadith where of la fakhr. There are various ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he says something, he tells the people one of his virtues, but then he says la fakhr. And he says, "Ana Sayyidul Anbiya, wa la fakhr." I am the leader, the master of the prophets, but there's no pride in this for me. And and the reason for that is because this is his true status is even beyond this. It's not a source of pride for him that he is the leader of the prophets, because his true status is even beyond this. But it's a source of pride for the prophets that they are given a leader like him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the same thing here. Imam Hussein al-Islam, Imam Hasan al-Islam, they're the leaders of the youth of Jannah, but their true status is even beyond that. And so, because, and I keep reiterating this point, because many of us have this notion that, there was nothing going on, that it was just kind of, they were just sitting back, laid back, and no issues going on while they were staying in Medina Munawwara. And yet, every day, every day things were made difficult for them on purpose, all day long. Every chance that these various leaders had, they used. Yeah. So, any questions? I didn't say a whole lot today. I just kind of re-emphasize some points, inshallah. So next.
A lot of things we did other than I speak for myself. Jazakallah khair.
وإياكم.
Barakallahu feek.
وإياكم.
نفعنا به وقدوتكم يا رب.
So inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to understand this and to and the main purpose of this, may He allow this to increase our love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Ahlul Bayt and those that they love. And so I'm going to end here today. If there are no other questions, we'll start next week with more specifically on Imam Hasan AS. But reminder, next Saturday night, which is the night between Saturday and Sunday, is the 15th of Shaban. So
Inshallah, we fast for that day. Correct, Sheikh?
yeah, inshallah. So if you can fast the 13th, 14th, and 15th, those 3 days, that'd be very, very good. If not, at least the 15th.
Yes.
And if you can,
I can move late, right?
yes, Qiyamul Layl. So if you can be up that night, it's very good, and ask for repentance. And actually, I was at a gathering last night, so they asked me to speak. So I spoke about this, about Tawbah, and I think my brother uploaded it onto the YouTube thing. So yeah, so those who wish to see that can take a look, because we throw around these terms a lot without looking at, from an Islamic perspective, what they really mean. And so I kind of went over some of that last night, so those who wish to see, they can see that. So just a reminder, and I'll remind people again in Jummah, inshallah, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fill our hearts with His love and the love of His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions, and all of those whom they love, and may He protect our brothers and sisters in Gaza and wherever they are being oppressed, and may He remove those that are the oppressors. Wa sallallahu ala khayra khalqihi Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. وإياكم.
Teacher, so